for taking the time to learn about copper. Copper is a metal, and it's number 29 on the periodic table. So what does that mean? If you take a look at this wonderful chart we have, this is all of our elements. And copper is number 29. And that means for every atom of copper, there's 29 protons and 29 electrons. Now copper is the only mineral that comes in a 2-1 oxidative state. And that means that it can lose 2 electrons or it can lose 1 electron. So when copper gets rained on in Mother Nature, and nature takes its course, it turns blue and becomes plant copper. And what actually happens is it loses 2 electrons. So that means for every 29 protons, there's 27 electrons. And that copper becomes something called copper 2, our cupric, or as I like to say, plant copper. Then the plants take copper 2, gives it back 1 electron, and makes it human copper. Copper 1, cuprous copper, or again, as I like to say, human copper. So when we put 1 electron back onto this copper, it turns this color. When we put this copper in our body and it gets in our cell, it turns back to this color inside the cell, not outside the cell. Well, why is this important? Copper 1, cuprous copper, or human copper, has the ability to travel through the cell membrane and get into the cell. Almost every organelle in here is dependent on copper. When you take a look at a human cell and it gets bacteria in there, only copper can get that bacteria out of the cell. So copper is very important to our human cells. Plant copper, cupric copper, copper 2, gets stuck in the extracellular matrix. It never makes it in the cell. It accumulates in the extracellular matrix. It accumulates first in the brain and in the liver. So everybody understands that we're getting toxic of it, but the disconnect is that we're all copper toxic and deficient at the same time. We're all toxic of the plant copper because it accumulates. And we're all starving for the human copper because we don't regenerate our soils. Our soils have been being depleted for over 100 years. So there's no copper going to the plants to come to us, going to the grass and the grains to the livestock. So that's why we're all starving for proper copper. So this is an amino acid copper chelate. This is the most common copper found in dietary supplements, plant copper. This is what we named CUNA-MSPR, stands for copper, neuro, muscle, spirit, human copper. Our cells of our body are 60 to 70% water. Isn't this interesting when you take plant copper and you drop water on it, that it rolls off like that? Doesn't seem to like it. Human copper loves water because our cells are 60 to 70% water. Because things good for us like water. And things that are bad for us don't like water. Now we can force the issue like we do when we take dietary supplements. This is what's going on in our belly. Heavy metals accumulating, building up in our brain, our extracellular matrix, in our liver. That's what's happening with this because it's plant copper. And our plants are starving for it and our plants need it. And when our plants get it, it makes human copper. This dissolves so nice, so smooth. When this copper 1, cuprous copper, copper for humans, it's going to change color because in the cell, now the copper has made it into the cell. Inside the cell is where it's supposed to oxidize and deliver its electron nutrition. This copper can never get into the cell because again, copper 2 is stuck on the outside. It can't cross the cell membrane. nor can it bind to copper-carrying chaperones. But now this copper easily gets into the cell. Once absorbed into the cell, now we're in the cell. Now watch, here comes the magic. So several minutes into it, just applying water, here the plant copper has not changed color, and when I rub it, it's gritty like a piece of sandpaper. And the human copper has changed color, and it's just so smooth. It's so smooth. So smooth. Bioavailable human copper. So just to reiterate, the human cell will not let plant copper into it. It has to be human copper. Human copper goes into the cell, then turns into copper 2 inside the cell. Then the body knows what to do with it. Then our body has waste, excretes the copper, it goes back to soil, and the process is done all over again. This is the world's first bioavailable copper supplement. And for such a simple reason, we simply did to the copper what plants do